Good mid-morning. My name is Andrea Lane, and I'm with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Ambassador Real Estate. Always a mouthful, and it's always so much to say. But it is the last 30 minutes with the Realtor for the month of January. We're doing all 4 weeks and talking to different people and stuff that's within your where you live. So I felt like everybody keeps asking about new construction stuff, and new construction is obviously top of mind right now because it's the top of the year. And what happens at the top of the year? Well, most of the builders increase prices because of costs that have changed since the end of last year and stuff that we're going into. So I felt, what better way, and especially because sometimes you're always out at a build site, so I could snag you today and ask you some of these questions, and that our people that are watching and so forth could ask the questions about new construction that they have. And we'll kind of go over some of the questions that I've been asked or that get asked the most frequently about new construction, building, remodeling, and that kind of stuff. So those are, there's a lot of stuff to cover in 30 minutes, but we're going to try and cover as much as we can. So please, if you have some of your new construction questions, ask them or text them to me, because I've got my phone with me so that I can see the questions that you have to ask. And we'll kind of dive right into it, because I would say that right now, the big question, and I'm sure you are so tired of hearing it, is wood prices. Is that because we saw the skyrocket in wood prices? Are we going to see any reprieve from that? And I feel like just as a trickle down for everything, I don't think we've seen the end of all this stuff just yet, because we're still kind of in the midst of COVID's grasp, in that there's a lot of labor shortages. Mm-hmm. So that's caused some increased pricing. And when we say labor shortages, obviously that's everything from people who frame it, mm-hmm. do the foundation, the people who are doing the trim work, because I know trim work's usually one that always delays that people take for granted. Kind of address, because I feel like that's always the biggest one, is that I get asked,
lumber prices.
Or if we see lumber prices go down, does that mean the price of the build of my house is going to go down? And
yeah, well, I kind of look at lumber prices, very similar to COVID being related to the flu. Everyone's focused on COVID because of the amount of attention it's getting.
Right.
And, no one talks about the flu, which is similar symptoms, right?
Right.
And so I feel lumber, I look at it the same way. Everyone's talking about lumber prices, so it's everyone's focus point. But me as a builder, lumber prices are probably the least of my issues. Obviously it's an additional cost, and they were at an all-time high, going into the end of last year. And
right.
In the summertime, it's rapidly increasing weekly. And then they came down a little bit. Now they're starting to go back up again. I think, they dropped down. I think we're just looking at a new normal. And I do suspect lumber prices are going to continue to rise. I'm a crystal ball, but
right.
It's not going to surprise me.
Right?
But the big cost, is everything else. It's not really lumber. Lumber, yeah, it's an added cost, but it's not that significant. Window prices are going up, and door prices are going up. Garage doors, it's getting harder to get material. Concrete went up. Steel's at all-time highs. Those are, you add it all together, the big picture.
And I think
everything's going up. Yeah.
I would say that would be one of the biggest things. It's the bigger picture that I think most people forget about. Right. Is that it isn't just lumber.
No.
That's and I think that we get kind of tunnel vision of, that's the only thing, and it's like, no. So I was talking with one of the other agents who reps a builder, and I was like, yeah, people don't realize that if you only have 1 to 2 trim guys, and one of them gets COVID and he's out for the week, mm-hmm. Now your entire build is held up from the trim. And it's not that they can't do the other things, but it's held up because of that.
Right.
That trim work for that. And so people forget that that's kind of all that kind of affects the timeline of your build.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people, lumber futures is easily accessible, and a lot of people follow them.
Okay, so explain that though for somebody who's watching who has no clue what you just said. You said lumber futures.
It'd be like looking at the stock market.
Okay.
Right? We're looking at lumber futures, and we can see them rapidly increasing. So people, and last year is a prime example. I had I had probably 3 clients that we were looking at getting into construction in January. Lumber prices, what they considered, were extremely high because lumber futures were up, and there was a lot of media and talk and hype about lumber prices increasing. So they decided to hold off. When lumber started coming down, everyone thinks, oh, it's an opportunity to build. Pricing is going down, but in fact, those houses went up. When we rebid them, yeah, our lumber package was down, but everything else was higher.
It was higher.
So ultimately, we're looking at rebidding these projects 6 months down the road when futures look good, but everything else had gone up, and the house actually cost more. So,
and I would say that's something that I'm seeing a lot of also is I had one of my clients, they were like, well, a year ago, this house was 40,000 less or 60,000 less. And I'm like, I would say the same thing of existing. So, it's almost that if you're thinking about building, do it. Don't hesitate. Go forward and get that stuff together. So I'll backtrack really quickly and introduce you. So I apologize. So this is Ricky DeWitt, and he is the builder with Urban Spark Construction, and you're the builder that I work with. And you talk about your story, because to me, your story is fascinating too, how you got into building, because besides being a builder, you're also a firefighter down in Lincoln.
Yeah.
And so you kind of, obviously, structure of a house is important to you, which you and I have talked about in looking at existing stuff. Talk about how you got into building.
Well, I mean, I've always been invested in real estate to some aspect since I was 17 years old. And then, that turned into long-term rental properties, short-term rental properties, rehabbing, wholesaling, flipping, remodeling. And then I started getting into some interest into the design of homes, because I've always been fascinated by architectural, structures that are unique. Unique things just kind of get me. So I started dabbling into designs and the creativity side of some of the cool houses you walk through, and I was like, well, I don't know why I'm fighting all these old houses. You jump into a project that you're gonna fix up and restore and sell it to a starting family, and it every time you open up a wall, it's just more and more problems, and you dive in a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And I'm always a guy that tends to go a little bit further than I probably should, but I do it for the experience. It's not always about the money.
Sure.
So I'm fine with breaking even on a project if I get to do something cool and experience and learn from it, and then take that with me into the future. So I was like, why am I fighting these old houses? Let's start designing some really cool new houses and just start new construction. So that's what we did. And the passion started around when I built my own house. When I first moved to Nebraska, I worked with a custom home builder, and it was everything but custom. They basically put up the shell, and I ended up having to do all the custom work or contracting the custom work, or finding the ability to get done what I envisioned I wanted done. And,
sure.
And so,
because that's always kind of the frustrating is I think people's idea when you see, oh, I'm a custom builder, you think I can go into them, I'm going to tell them what I want. They're going to be like, oh yeah, here's what it costs, and let's go forward with it. And what I find, even as an agent, and even having done a build myself with a builder that kind of touted I'm a semi-custom, was that it wasn't even semi-custom. It was, hey, here's what we'll do for you. This is what you can pick, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that wasn't really custom. Like, right. It was just so somebody else could pick the same thing I did, just maybe a different color, maybe a different countertop. But they touted as a custom.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, and I don't look down on any type of builder, whether it's, a celebrity home, a lot of people refer to as cookie cutter, they punch them out, but it's a great business model, and they can build into a price point that some people might need to start and make a good starter home for a young family.
Right, but I think so with that builder in particular, mm-hmm. They're ordering in bulk as far as countertops, carpeting, build materials, mm-hmm. and so forth, which is part of why they can keep their cost down.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people understand that. Like, that's why with a more custom or semi-custom builder, you're going to pay a little more is
Mhm.
because you're not ordering in bulk. I guess to me, it's kind of like the difference between I go to Costco and I get, toilet paper in bulk,
Mhm.
or I can just go run down to the grocery store and I can grab, a 4-pack, and what I pay for it will vastly be different.
Well, and that's my point is, I don't look down on any builder, any style of builder, because I feel like there's a market for a particular individual.
Sure.
And not looking down on celebrity, it's not the highest quality build or structure, but it's designed to fit a price point. It's more budget oriented, and it's just not something I want. I don't want to be a big company like that. I don't want those type of headaches. I want to focus on building quality, not quantity, and I focus on my clients. I feel like the difference between a good builder, which there's a lot of them out there, and the bad builders, which there's a lot of them out there, is really comes down to communication. So when I built my house, it was a horrible experience, and you hear these horror stories all the time about these experiences, and it's either deceitfulness and honesty, or builders just trying to get someone under contract regardless of what their budget is, knowing that they're not going to hit that budget unless they pick crap. But when you're building a quality home and you're investing hard-earned money, and this is supposed to be an enjoyable and exciting experience, you can't just go in and say, oh yeah, I'm going to put what we call boob lights everywhere in a $800,000 $800,000 house,
right?
And that's what I'm going to set my allowance for, knowing very well you're not going to hit it,
right?
And then I deal with this all the time. My bids might come in higher because my bids are realistic. Like, I want you to get to the end, and I want our number to be that or less. But people will go with someone who's $50,000 more than or less than me, and by the time they get done, they're $50,000 over what I was at. And it's just, I'm not going to be deceitful, and I'm not going to put crap in my houses unless I will, if that's what you want, obviously. Right. But I'm going to voice my opinion. I'm going to be like, listen, I wouldn't put this in my house, but I understand we're trying to hit a budget. We need to get you there. That's fine. But those are your choices to make, not mine. So and
I think people also miss out on spending more in the basement. Because I know you and I have talked about that, and even with clients, when budget is a factor, is that you can have a smaller footprint above and finish more in the basement, and still get the square footage, like total square footage that you want, still like the number of bedrooms and that kind of stuff, without having to like go over budget, because that below grade square footage is less expensive.
Right.
And I think people forget about that, because on the flip side, when they go to sell their house, the appraisers are doing the same thing. They're not giving the same value below grade that they give above grade. But we have that advantage of having it, like having that additional space and square footage and so forth. I think that's one of the things I find from people who are moving here from places that have no basements, is the expense of having the basement is greater, obviously, and it increases build time. So I think that's one of the things that like kind of going into the builds right now that people kind of take for granted is you can't just boom, slap a foundation in and then boom, start building right away. Like, there's a process of having that settle down, backfilling the foundation so that you don't have some of the like settlement or structural issues. Right. But that every property has some small amount of settlement because, you're building it in different weather conditions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna there's no way around it. It's going to happen, but done properly, it's not going to cause structural issues.
Right.
Is what you're trying to avoid.
Or
water problems, or
which is a big thing here.
Basically, those nightmares and those scenarios that every homeowner frets, especially in new construction. And I mean, it happens. It's sometimes it's just it happens, but if you can minimize that by doing it properly, you're going to end up with a much better quality home in the long term. So yeah, there's a right way to do things, and it's from a structural standpoint, that's one area I don't allow my clients to manipulate. Like, it has to be sound, it has to be structural. I'm not going to cut corners on the shell of the home, the core of the home. If they're trying to save money and cut corners that way, I'm not the right builder.
Well, no, because that'll be way many larger problems down the road than it would be up front, because there are areas to save money, but your structure is definitely not one of them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, ultimately, that comes down to, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, you know.
Right.
And there's a lot of homeowners that have never built before, or don't understand, you know, structural engineering, or you know, load points and things like that. But
I would say even existing, though. I would say both new construction and existing. I would say so you said load points for it's also where a wall is load bearing. So I always tell my clients, think of Legos or Tinker Toys. Do you remember Tinker Toys? You put sticks together with things and you build structures. Well, you can't keep putting sticks in without something else to help, or that span goes and you have dip in it. And it's kind of that same thought where even people go into existing, they're like, oh, can I just knock this wall out? And I was like, I don't know how this was built structurally to just, like cut a wall out. I was like, we would have to kind of go into where the roof line is, what is the structure of it, to see, can we just knock that wall out? Because I've come into a couple existing homes where they knocked walls out, and you're like, oh, so did they rafter it to help support it, or what did they do? And agents' eyes kind of gloss over because they have no idea. And that's where you start worrying, oh my gosh, am I going to have sagging later? Or sometimes in older homes, the main floor starts sagging, so they have to have some additional supports in the basement. And that's just because when they built it, that was their current code for it. And that changes. So you talked about, what they don't know. What do you feel is maybe one of the biggest mistakes buyers make going into new construction?
I feel personally, and this is kind of my main focus, is especially in this time, in this day and age where price points are just rapidly increasing.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Budget is becoming more and more of a focus point, which obviously it's probably the most important aspect to a client.
Right.
But there has to be a happy medium when it comes to quality. I see a lot of people want to cut corners because they're more focusing on their budget, where maybe just adding $1,000 or $2,000 to that budget will give them so much better product. It's not worth to cut the corner there. Let's look somewhere else for savings. I don't recommend we do it here. This is worth every bit of $2,000 long term. Like, let's find savings other places. So I feel like budget kind of directs people on quality, and I think it should be the opposite. I think we should be focusing on quality and adjusting our budget, and then that's where I come into play with. I like being creative to find other solutions to save money where we can, or creative ways to build things differently. I mean, there's so many new products out there and new ways to do things that you can, get the same concept or vision or feature that you're looking to, but not spend a huge amount to make it happen.
Yeah, right. So now that's one of the interesting things. So last week I talked with Travis, and we were talking paint colors and stuff, which is, always interesting to me to see like what's the trend, what's coming in. And he had said the grays are on their way out, cream is coming in, and I was like, wow, like, and you always kind of go full circle, what was popular here, popular there, and like, because colored appliances used to be all the rage. Everybody had a colored appliance, and so I'm kind of curious, and I know some of the supply has kind of shifted what people want, as far as like stainless steel or just getting black, seeing, colored, a little more play with kitchens, a little more color play with kitchens, which is kind of, to me, exciting because, just brown wood kind of gets old. So to see some of the dynamic of playing with two tones or actual colors like blue or green or red or whatever in the kitchens is kind of exciting for build things. What do you see as some of the build trends, like things that people are doing? Or,
well, I mean, black is a real big one right now. Black windows, black hardware, is gotten real popular these last couple of years.
Because you talked about white walls and black trim.
Yeah.
Or black doors.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You see white houses with black trim starting to starting to come in, and
with a little hint of wood in there, like some wood shutters and stuff. We talked about that, which somebody in my neighborhood has.
Still a thing. But now I'm starting to see like antique brasses starting to come back.
Yes, but I love that. Yeah. I love the look of it. I think it's because it's not that kind of shiny builder brassy. I don't want to say chrome because chrome is the silver version of it, but like where it was like shiny brass. Because you can walk into a house and go, oh, so this was builder grade stuff when they build it, and they haven't updated anything because it's still that shiny kind of brass. It's almost it's like muted.
It's like a patinaed brass,
right? Yeah. And it's very sharp looking. Like I like the look of it. So yeah, I'm kind of excited for that, to see that, because some of the farmhouse look is, they're saying, on the way out. I think some of the craftsman things are always kind of timeless. Mm-hmm. And I know like you kind of lean of a mix of kind of craftsman and modern.
Well, yeah, that's what I've noticed is people are trying to get away from everything they're seeing, and they're trying to create. Everyone wants to create their new thing, and usually it's what I call a hybrid. It's like mixing two styles together and producing a new baby that no one's ever seen before. Then before you know it,
everybody's doing it.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah. Right.
So,
because I would say that like when we did the I never know what to call it. It's a multi-level or 2-story or that we had in Springfield Pines.
Oh yeah, that modern hybrid,
which had a lot of different peaks and stuff. And I remember when I posted the pictures on Facebook, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" Like, because it wasn't like everybody else's. And I think that's part of the reason we work so well together. Is I do my business, and the things that I do aren't like what everybody else is doing. Never have. I'm sure my friends from high school are laughing right now, but it was different, and I like that. And it wasn't what everybody else was doing. And what's interesting is now from that time period, I'm seeing more of it where people want a little different elevation. It's not just the straight roof line. It's not just.
Well, what I like to inspire people to, and that's how we came up with our name, Spark. You know, everything starts from a spark, an inspiration, an action. It sparks from a thought and an idea, something you've seen. Everything stems from a spark. And that's why I work really well with my architect, Vince Kanosic Design. You know, he brings one of his statements that you'll hear him always say in the design world is form follows function. And so basically we form the house to follow the function of the family that's going to live within it. That's what truly makes it custom. It doesn't have to be extravagant or anything. It's designed to fit the function of how the house is going to be used.
Right. Because I've done houses with no dining room.
Right.
Because they didn't want a dining room.
Right.
They just did a really big island, mm-hmm. and had enough room for seats around the island. Mm-hmm. Because for them, they, it wasn't that they didn't eat. It was just for the function of their house.
Right.
They wanted a big island. That's where everybody kind of gathered. It was easy to clean up, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's how that modern house in Springfield stemmed. I was trying to think of how young families with young kids or middle-aged kids function, because that's kind of who we were targeting in that development. So it led to integrating 2 open staircases, one on the front of the house and the back of the house. It led to having the master suite on its own, like mid-level, where it was just levitating over the foundation, but it allowed the parents to have privacy where they're not below the kids or above the kids, but they're not far from the kids.
Right.
Because a lot of younger kids, the parents want to be close in case they can hear them.
Right.
When they're sick or hollering, but it still gave them that privacy. So that's kind of how that one stemmed, where we have access upstairs. The kids have access upstairs directly off the garage to their bedrooms without trampling through the house, but everyone wants those open staircases because it's also a statement piece. And then you got both of them in this particular house. Parents have privacy, but still close enough to the kids, and that's how we designed it. And we threw the modern aspect on it because it's a unique niche. Probably not the most popular in the Midwest, but there is a market for it.
Right.
So we threw that modern style into it because we wanted to let people know we can do it.
Right.
So
which I think is kind of
to work out great for us.
Right. And I think what the mix of stuff or what's changing, because we have a lot of businesses coming here, so we have a lot of people that aren't necessarily from here. So they're wanting to see what they're used to, which may be a little more
and it's
modern.
a lot of tech, a lot of tech companies coming, which are
right, and
modern.
so that, yep, and I'm seeing more people want smart features in a house. Like, I want to be able to unlock my door from my phone, or I want to be able to turn off lights, or like warm up the house before I get home, because they drop the temperature during the day and they want to heat it up just before they get in, or different features like that. So I'm definitely seeing more smart stuff come about. Where do you see, or like, what's your favorite thing right now that's coming up that you've kind of seen some smart wise or tech wise in a house?
So me personally, I've always been a tech savvy kind of guy. I put Control 4, which is a smart home system, in my house 12 years ago. And back then it was not new, but fairly new. That concept was new, especially in mid-level houses. You always see them in the expensive homes, but how often do we walk through multi-million-dollar homes?
Right.
So, but it was something I had to have. I really wanted it, and I invested quite a bit of money, and I wish I probably didn't at that time. But now, the biggest gripe I have with it then is I couldn't go in and tune it up. I had to hire someone to come to my house at $90 an hour to get my system to work, or I wanted to buy a new TV. We had to reprogram it to that TV.
Oh wow! Okay.
So not only do I got to buy a new TV, now I got to pay a guy $180 to come to my house and reprogram the system I bought, when
it wasn't as user friendly.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that complicated.
User. Okay.
So now you're seeing a lot of that come available where it is very user friendly. There's platforms where you can make setting adjustments or tweaks, or have a light switch do a particular function, all from your app. So, and the prices are coming drastically down as well.
Just a little more user friendly.
So I'm excited, and actually we're going to start doing some product reviews on some new tech that I'm pretty excited about, and you probably see it integrated into our housing. So
because I had friends that did a bunch of like stuff within their house, like switches, light fixtures, and so on, to where they could tie it in with their Alexa. And actually, one of mine, they adjusted it in their like office space area, because they were like, Alexa, put the lights in the office at blue, and so it would turn them on, and then it changes it to blue, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah, no, we got some new light switches. We're going to do a YouTube video product review on them. That it has Alexa built into it. It's got intercom system built into it, so you can call the kids from the second floor.
Right, so kind of like Google, using the Google.
Probably. I mean, this one's not directed towards any large company, so it's not an Amazon product. It's not a Google product.
Oh wow! Okay.
It works with pretty much everything.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's which I like. I don't like being married to one.
Right.
It actually works with Control 4, which is my system. So, which is awesome. I mean, and just this one switch, you can pretty much program it to do whatever you want now. It's pretty neat, and it will work with pretty much every. Whether you have Sonos or Alexa or Google or Smart Hub or
because my 4-year-old has figured out
LED lights,
how to do the broadcasting on Google, especially when she gets in trouble. So I think for me it would just be, I would love something that would, I need motion lights for my kids, so when they're out of their rooms, their lights shut off, or the bathroom light shuts off, like just to save on some of those like utilities. I feel like that would be the smart feature I would want for my house. Be like. But I know they have them for garage doors. They have them. I'm definitely seeing more houses want cameras on the exterior. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be something, I think, going forward, that we'll see a lot more, whether it be like plugins or even just the space for cameras on a home. I'm definitely seeing some more of that, like beyond just your Ring doorbell, to where that is a little more.
But those companies are starting to provide those items at low cost. And, when I have cameras in my system when I built it, that's the reason I purchased that system, because I wanted everything integrated in one. TV, I wanted not just lighting and security, but I also wanted audio and video.
Sure.
And then you would have to buy each one of those products separately, and you'd have to have an individual app for each one of those.
Right.
So that's why I invested in Control 4, because it's basically a central brain system. I can control all everything. Of that. The the big item was audio video. Not a lot of companies did it then, and still even to this day,
which is surprising.
Yeah, still to this day, there's not a lot of audio video integration. It's mostly just audio, security, and light features. So, but my feature would control the thermostat, control a hot tub, controls the lights, speakers in multiple different zones. So that's kind of when I went that route, but it was just a pain in the butt because if I wanted to change something, or after I had a program that I didn't like it, I wanted it to do something a little bit differently, it was just a pain in the butt to get that to happen. So.
Right. Well, which is some of what we've seen with some of the garages, because we did a plug-in at the Springfield Pines one, and that's one of the things I would say I'm having more buyers want the access to from a new construction standpoint is, and even existing it's a lot more difficult, but being able to put a plug in for the purpose of having either a hybrid car or having an electric car, that move to that and having it already be either an option. I want to say I've only seen like one builder that I've sat with within the past 90 days where they made it an option if you had an electric car to have a plug installed into the garage so that you're not having to do it after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I do that on all my houses. So,
but I definitely think that's going to be something we're going to see more of from a tech standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, so when we do our electrical walkthrough or when we're designing the home, I always advise my clients we need to have a power source for electric vehicles. They're coming, whether you plan on getting one or not. Having it there is going to save you so much more money long term, and I'm sure you'll find a way to use it, whether it's tools or just even from a resale standpoint.
Hot tub. No.
Hot tub. But from a resale standpoint, it's such a small investment to put it there, and we're heading that direction. I know we are.
Right. That's
so,
why.
Yeah, you might as well. You're going to plug something, and I guarantee at some point.
Right.
So.
The garage is definitely somewhere where you're plugging stuff.
And I mean, for a while, there was rumors that it was going to be code.
Really?
That you're going to have 220 into the garage to meet code.
Okay.
I don't think that's passed yet, not that I'm aware of, but pretty much every house I do, we do it. Yeah. If my clients are going to fight me on it, I'll pay for it. But it's got to be done.
Right. Well, no, and that was, in sitting down with another build, somebody was like, we were looking at the electrical panel and they were like, oh, should we do a 120 or should we do a 200? And I was like, well, it depends on what you do in your house. And if you have an electric car, and I was like, well, and if you don't, we could do, separate panel, put it in the garage, have something there. So I think, knowing some of those things, because I think sometimes going into new construction, people are just working with a realtor that maybe doesn't understand some of the intricacies of kind of that form with function with how you're going to use the house and, how many people are going to be in the house and so on. I was like, because it's going to be 2-3 people, a 120 panel is more than enough to, not. But there's so many other things that are, I think, part of new construction that I think as the year goes by, we'll have to sit down again and chat with and talk about some of the stuff and some of the trends, because we're at the height of the year where prices are going up, and we'll see some of the new things roll out for the year or what people are going to do and that kind of stuff. So I'm excited for that. Nervous at the same time because, new construction prices have always been going up. It's just, they're strained, I think, because of COVID stuff. But, if you're thinking the build now is always better than waiting.
Yeah, I don't, if you're out there waiting, obviously I'm not a financial advisor, nor can I tell the future, but I don't suspect we're going to see price decreases this year for sure. Next year, the only time I can see price decreases is if we have an increase in inventory, and unfortunately there's a shortage regardless, and I don't see it getting better because housing is slowing.
Right.
Because now we're having supply issues and pricing issues, so
computer chip issues and just everything.
It's tough to say when we will see a correction in the real estate world, or if we even will.
Sure.
Maybe we're just in a new price point. The government's printing a lot of money. Our dollar is worth a lot less. We used to buy a candy bar for 50 cents. Now it's $2. The housing market is no different.
Right.
Dollar just doesn't go as far as it used to. So we could just be in a new area. So
it'll be interesting to see what happens. And so we'll have to make it a point. So it's January now. Maybe we'll touch base again in July, and we'll sit down and kind of talk new construction again. So if there's some questions that maybe we didn't get answered for you or that you have, please feel free to comment below this video or message me directly, and we'll be happy to answer those going forward. And if you want to sit down and maybe talk about doing a build with us, we're happy to do that as well. So thanks for joining us with 30 Minutes with a Realtor. I'm Andrea Lane with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Thanks for joining us.